Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Action!
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era. Hear fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine, who quite literally lives just beneath the Hollywood sign, and actress-writer Nan McNamara. Now your hosts, Steve and Nan.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. Hi Nan.
Hi Steve.
It's that time of year and we're very excited because Nan and I have once again been given press credentials to the Turner Classic Film Festival, which is coming up here in Los Angeles, April 24th to the 27th. We went last year, it was our first time. It was so cool, so exciting. We saw some amazing films and we're really excited to do it again.
And there's so many films. The full list has just been, actually it's not even the full list. There's still a couple of TBAs, but man, are we going to be gone from 9 a.m. in the morning until midnight seeing films.
I know. It's really great. And you know, the theme this year is, and I love this, Grand Illusions, Fantastic Worlds on Film, and they describe it this way. You're invited on a wondrous journey to enchanted worlds of fantasy and stories beyond belief. From myths and magical creatures to ghostly encounters and travels through time, you'll escape with fellow movie lovers to places that will ignite your imagination.
Well, April 24th through the 27th, we are going to be escaping, baby.
Yeah, what's not to love about that? And I love that they have a really great variety of movies. They're definitely leaning in towards fantasy, sci-fi movies, but you know, they have pre-code movies and some musicals that I've never seen and some a couple of film noirs. They're a little low on the film noir this year.
And last year was really heavy on film noir.
So. But we just had the Film Noir Film Festival here, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, and they also have a lot of really interesting contemporary classics.
Yes.
I mean, I think of them as contemporary.
Yeah.
They're doing a screening of The Fabulous Baker Boys with Michelle Pfeiffer getting her hands and feet in cement at the Chinese Theater. They're also opening the festival with The Empire Strikes Back, and George Lucas will be there and will be honored. And then also things like The Ritz with Rita Moreno. And
which I'm dying to see that movie.
Me too.
I've never seen it, but I've heard wonderful and strange things about it.
It sounds like I've never seen it either.
Yeah.
Jaws, believe it or not, 50th anniversary.
Yeah, and Lorraine Gary's going to be there.
Right. So many other special guests in attendance. I mean, George Stevens Jr. is being honored. The documentary he created about his father will be shown.
He's actually receiving the Robert Osborne Award.
Yes, he is.
Which is really, really cool because, I mean, as you all know, his dad was the great George Stevens who directed A Place in the Sun and Shane and Giant and, you know, so many classics.
Right.
So it's fun to see George Stevens Jr. get his due. One of the things that he's most known for is he produces all of the Kennedy Center Honors shows.
Yes.
Which I think he's won like 15 Emmys for.
Right. And I believe he began the American Film Institute.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other contemporary title, before we dig into the more classic cinema, that I am so thrilled about is The American President.
Oh, right.
I love that film.
It's a great movie.
With Annette Bening and Michael Douglas, but Aaron Sorkin and Rob Reiner will be talking about the film.
That will be very cool. Yeah. Would love to get Sorkin's take on that.
Yes.
And especially how it relates now to what's going on in modern politics.
Right. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So it should be really interesting.
The other thing, did you notice they're doing a cemetery tour?
Yeah.
And that is your jam, baby.
I love me a cemetery tour.
No, you've got a few you need to take Lindsay and I on.
I could give a cemetery tour.
I know, you could.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
I love that.
That sounds fun.
You know, another fun thing that they're doing too, and I love this because I just loved his movies, was they're doing a tribute to Michael Schultz.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know who Michael Schultz is, but you do.
Yes, you do.
You do. I mean, he was one of the probably most prolific African-American directors from the 1970s. People probably know him from Cooley High, which is kind of what put him on the map. He became very closely associated with the great Richard Pryor. They did movies together like Car Wash, which they're screening at the festival, and Grease Lightning in 77, which also featured Pam Grier, and Which Way Is Up and Bustin' Loose in 81. He also directed Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1978 and The Last Dragon in 85 and Crush Groove, also 85. So that I'm excited about.
Yes. There are two films that are going to be screened with live music,
Yes.
which is so exciting. They're doing Beau 1926 with the Montalto Motion Picture Orchestra.
That's fun. I've never seen the 1926 version. I've seen the later
Yes,
version. But
yes,
yeah.
me neither. Ronald Colman, Neil Hamilton, Ralph Forbes star as the three brothers forced by scandal to flee England and join the French Foreign Legion. And it also features a young William Powell.
Oh, nice.
And then The Freshman, 1925, Harold Lloyd's film about
Yes.
college football. That will be, live music will be played by Ben Modell.
I love that.
Yeah.
Another cool thing is that a lot of these movies, they're bringing in special guests to either introduce it or
Yes.
do a Q&A afterwards or something like that. And some of the ones that I'm most excited about, and there's so many, but Kathy Bates is going to be there introducing Misery.
Yes.
Barry Bostwick's going to be there introducing Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1975.
Right.
And James Cromwell's going to be there with a screening of Babe from 1995. He's also
Yes.
introducing The Enchanted Cottage, which is such a great movie.
Yes, that his
1945.
father directed.
Yeah, that's right. And then we mentioned, Lorraine Gary's going to be there with Jaws, but I'm kind of excited to see Kyle MacLachlan's going to be there for a Blue Velvet, screening, which is a
yeah.
nice tribute to David Lynch.
Yeah, having just passed.
Which will be fun.
And there are two films also that are going to be shown in VistaVision.
VistaVision.
Which we've talked about on this podcast before.
Yeah.
And it's really come up a lot lately because of The Brutalist.
Yeah.
And it being filmed in VistaVision. But they're actually using VistaVision projectors
Yeah.
for the screenings of We're No Angels, 1955, and which we'll talk about later.
Yes.
And another one we'll talk about later, Gunfight at the OK Corral, 1957.
Yes, exactly. And for people that don't know what VistaVision is, I'm going to try to explain it as best I can.
Yeah.
Unlike the sort of standard practice of shooting a 35 millimeter film, they usually run the film strip into the camera vertically. And VistaVision shoots the negative, though, horizontally. That's the difference. And it exposes each frame across the width of two standard 35 millimeter frames. So this larger negative area results in this remarkable sharpness, finer details, reduced grain, and it just makes it one of the highest quality film formats that's ever been developed.
Yes.
So it's going to be really exciting to see these movies.
Especially on the big screen.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should dive into two things. One is films that you and I have never seen and talk about them.
Yes, that we're planning to see.
That we're planning to see.
Festival.
And then films that are on the schedule for Turner Classic Movie Festival that we've seen a million times, but we'll go back anytime at screening to see it again.
Well, actually, there's several that I've seen many, many times, but I've never seen on the big screen as they were intended. And I'm really excited about several of these.
Yeah, it's pretty thrilling.
Yeah.
All right, well, why don't you jump in?
Well, for me, and this is the movie that I'm excited to see that I've never seen, and it's a Western. It's called Gunman's Walk.
Yes, I want to see that too.
1958. Yes. This one is directed by Phil Carlson. And you may not know Phil Carlson, but he's also the guy who directed a couple of really great film noirs. Kansas City Confidential back in 52. And then The Brothers Rico with our
we
buddy
just talked about
Richard
that.
Conte
Yes,
in
and James Darren.
1957. Yeah, that's right. And this movie, Gunman's Walk, was written by Frank S. Nugent, and it's based on a story by Rick Hardman. It's produced by Columbia Pictures, and it stars Van Heflin, James Darren, speaking of the devil, Tab Hunter, and Catherine Grant, who, of course, went on to be Mrs. Bing Crosby for all those years.
Right.
A little bit about the movie, the synopsis. It's this epic tale of the seasoned rancher, Lee Hackett, played by Van Heflin, and his two sons. And it's a little bit like Cain and Abel. One son, Davy, James Darren, he's the mature, responsible one. And then Ed, played by Tab Hunter, against type, I might add, he's the bad seed.
Yeah, that is
He's
against
the bad
type.
boy. He's always in trouble, doesn't do the right thing. Just a hooligan, as my grandmother would say. Just a hooligan. Well, when Ed's temper gets out of control, it results in the death of this innocent Native American, played by, and this is so astonishing to me, played by Bert Convy.
Oh.
I know. The talk show host, the game show guy,
But
Bert
it's also
Convy.
just so wrong.
And he shouldn't be playing Native American.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
hey, that was Hollywood in 1958.
Yeah.
Well, Lee tries his best to cover his son's track for the murder. He tries to cover up for him, He even makes a deal with this unscrupulous horse trader who falsely testifies in Ed's behalf and gets him off the hook. But it really becomes clear to his dad that Ed can't change, and this really causes an ultimate climactic shootout between father and son. Lots of great heavy themes involved of a usual Western fare, so I'm very excited about that. Kind of a fun fact about this movie, and I did not know this, I read it doing research, was that Quentin Tarantino has said that this movie was the inspiration for Tanner, the fictitious movie that starred Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, interesting.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is very cool. Well,
So
that
that's my
sounds like a
first.
great one. All right. My first one that I've never seen is one that I actually started researching for a previous episode we had. I can't even remember which one now. It's called Heaven Knows Mr. Allison, 1957.
It's a great movie, yes.
It's
Yes.
directed by John Huston,
Yes.
and it's going to be introduced by John Huston's son, the wonderful actor, writer, director, Danny Huston. So that's going to be really nice.
Oh, that would be fun.
But listen, anytime a film features an Irish nun, I'm in. And that's
You know,
what this one has.
When the movie came out, and I remember reading this, she caught a lot of hell for that accent.
Oh, did
like,
she?
A lot of the critics did not like her accent. So I'll be curious what you think
All right,
when
well,
you see it. Yes.
You know, being an Irish lass myself, and
Yeah,
I have done an Irish accent before,
you will
but
be the real.
okay, I'll be the true
Yes.
litmus test.
Yes.
Well, it's set during World War II, and Deborah Carr, obviously, is the Irish nun. Robert Mitchum plays opposite her as a tough Marine, and they're marooned together on this desert island in the South Pacific. So, in addition to the threat of being captured by the Japanese, there's this growing tension in their relationship between
Sexual
Mitchum and Carr.
tension, maybe?
Yes, and as they grow closer, the question becomes, will Sister Angela forsake her vows for Robert Mitchum?
If I'm not mistaken from the movie, I don't think she's taken the final vow.
Okay.
So she's still in a position where she could opt out.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
But it was pretty controversial when it came out in the 50s.
Robert Mitchum or God? That's a tough call.
That's very tough. That's very tough. It apparently took 5 years and several writers before Huston and his co-writer could come up with an adaptation of the novel by Charles Shaw that would pass the censors.
Yes.
So, and the Catholic Church had a representative on location with them in Trinidad and
that's
Tobago
wild.
to make sure that nothing offensive got into the film. John Wayne, Kirk Douglas, Clark Gable, and Marlon Brando all wanted to play the part of Mr. Allison. Carr was nominated for an Oscar for her performance, and it also forged a lifelong friendship with Robert Mitchum. A fun trivia fact, when filming began, Mitchum, who didn't know her, worried that she would be like the prim characters that she had played. But after she swore at director John Huston during one take, Mitchum, who was in the water, almost drowned laughing. and the two had an enduring friendship for the rest of their life until Mitchum passed away in 1997. It's actually the first of 4 movies that they did together.
Yeah, they did a few.
The Sundowners in 1958, The Grass is Greener, 1960, and they did a TV movie together called Reunion at Fairborough, 1985.
Oh, what a nice coupling that is.
Yeah.
Kind of unexpected. He's
Yes.
so raw and masculine, and
And she's prim.
so prim and proper.
Yes.
And yeah, I love that though. Good choice. I
Yeah.
can't wait to hear your
Yeah,
thoughts on it.
I can't wait either.
Well, my second one, I've never seen it. I don't know how I've missed this movie over the years, but I'm excited to see The Divorcee.
Oh, yes.
1930. This one was directed by Robert Z. Leonard, who also directed The Great Ziegfeld in 36 and Pride and Prejudice, 1940, Ziegfeld Girl, 41. And it's based on a 1929 novel, Ex-Wife, by Ursula Parrott. This was an MGM movie that, of course, starred the queen of MGM at the time,
Of course.
Norma Shearer.
Yes.
It also stars Chester Morris and Conrad Nagel and Robert Montgomery, and Florence Eldridge, who, of course, was the wife of Frederick March. Little synopsis about it. After 3 years of marriage, Ted, played by Chester Morris, has an affair that threatens to destroy his happy marriage with wife Jerry, played by Norma Shearer. Well, she retaliates with an affair of her own with Robert Montgomery, and the couple decides to divorce, and Jerry tries to find happiness with a new man, while Ted kind of goes down the dark path with alcoholism and depression. And after a series of flings, Jerry reunites with Paul, played by Conrad Nagel, who was once in love with her, but now he's married somebody else. So sounds like lots of sleeping around.
Yeah.
lovelorn people, and it just sounds great. But I want to see it because this is the movie that Norma Shearer won her Oscar for.
Yes.
Which was really cool. Fun fact, producer David O. Selznick originally bought the rights to this film as a vehicle for Joan Crawford. If Norma was the queen of MGM, she was the princess at the time. When Norma Shearer got wind of this project, she begged Selznick to play the lead role. Well, Selznick just thought she was too prim, too proper, too ladylike, and frankly, not sexy enough to play this very sexualized woman. Because also it's a pre-code movie too, so there's a lot of risque scenes in here. Well, Norma, and smart woman, this Norma Shearer, she hired the famed photographer George Hurrell.
Yes.
And they did a series of very smoking hot, sexy photos of her that changed Selznick's mind. Once he saw these really smoldering photos of Norma, he said, all right, you are sexy, my bad. And she got the role.
And those photos, the way that they were taken, became the famous Hurrell photos of all the MGM stars.
Yes, absolutely. This movie, it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Writing, and of course, Norma won the Best Actress Oscar.
Nice.
So I'm very excited to see Norma in her win.
That's a great choice. That's a great choice. All right, the next one for me is a Western as well. Gunfight at the OK Corral, 1957. I can't believe I've never seen this one.
How have you missed that one?
I don't know. I mean, it stars two huge actors playing lawman Wyatt Earp and outlaw Doc Holliday. Of course, that's Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster. Lindsay and I are huge fans of Tombstone from 1993, and it's just so on my mind because of Val Kilmer's recent passing and him having played Doc Holliday. This is directed by John Sturges, who also brought us other magnificent Westerns, The Magnificent Seven, 1960, Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955, another great movie, and The Great Escape, 1963.
Yes, so good.
And this is the one that's going to be shown in VistaVision. So this was the second film that Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster did together, and they as well became lifelong friends. Their first collaboration, I Walk Alone, 1948, they were cast as rivals.
For Elizabeth Scott.
Yes.
Yeah,
and in this one, they play allies. As I said, they set out to help Wyatt Earp's brother deal with the villainous Clanton gang in Tombstone, Arizona. I think we all, even if you've never seen the film, you know the story, right? And it's been filmed many, many times, including in John Ford's My Darling Clementine in 1946. The cinematographer, Charles Lang, is another star of this film, shooting it in VistaVision and Technicolor. According to TCM, fun fact, Sturges also turned the showdown, the big moment in the film, which originally only lasted 30 seconds. He turned it into a 5-minute tour de force of suspenseful acting and editing. It co-stars Joe Van Fleet, who we love, and Rhonda Fleming as Lancaster and Douglas's love interest. It also features John Ireland playing Johnny Ringo and Earl Holliman as the Earp's loyal deputy. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, you're going to like that one.
Well, we have more films to talk about, but before we do that, let's share with our listeners this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
And the Pop Quiz question of the week involves a movie that we're about to talk about in the second half of the show. It's a movie that I love, and I can't wait to see on the big screen because I've never seen it on the big screen. It's from the movie A Guy Named Joe, 1943. And the question is, famously, the production of this movie was shut down due to an accident. What happened? Who was involved? And how did it affect the rest of his career?
Oh, great question. We'll be back with the answer and more about films at the Turner Classic Movie Festival right after this.
Okay, Steve and Nan are back in makeup, getting a little touch-up, so let's take another stop on the Hollywood tour. One of the films Steve considered discussing was 1959's Suddenly Last Summer. It's based on the Tennessee Williams play of the same name. Stars Katharine Hepburn as an evil aunt, Elizabeth Taylor, her young niece, and Montgomery Clift as a doctor. Directed by Joseph Mankiewicz. Now, the plot is pretty dark. Taylor plays a young woman so distressed by the death of her cousin that doctors consider giving her a lobotomy at her aunt's insistence. Well, here's what you may not have known about this film. Montgomery Clift, who plays that surgeon, was recovering from a near-fatal car crash when Elizabeth Taylor insisted he be cast alongside her. Mankiewicz reluctantly agreed, and Clift struggled during production. Mankiewicz actually wanted to replace him. He didn't think he was up to the job. Fortunately for Clift, he had two allies in both Taylor and Hepburn, who stood up for him and fought to keep him in the film. And it worked. It's good to have strong women who have your back, huh? And now back to Steve and Nan from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
Welcome back, everybody. Before we get further into our dissertation on what to expect at the new Turner Classic Film Festival coming up, we are going to give a shout out to our listener of the week. And this week, we are giving a shout out to Bryant Fair from Central Virginia. Bryant just recently wrote us. He's been so supportive, and he's also an artist, and he says he likes to listen to us as he paints.
Oh, I love that.
Which I thought was so cool.
Maybe our sonorous tones are helping him create a masterpiece.
I know. So thank you, Bryant. Thank you for checking us out. We're so glad you found us. Welcome to the family.
Thank you, Bryant.
So continuing on, my next movie that I've never seen, that I'm dying to see, and I don't know how I've missed this movie because it has everything I love about a movie in it. It's directed by George Stevens. It stars Cary Grant and Jean Arthur.
Oh.
And also has Ronald Colman in it, and Edgar Buchanan, Glenda Farrell, Emma Dunn. How have I never seen Talk of the Town?
Yes,
from
I know.
1942.
Yeah.
It was actually written by Irwin Shaw,
Okay.
who everyone may know became a very successful novelist and wrote Rich Man, Poor Man, which of course became the big blockbuster miniseries. Well, this movie, it's Columbia Pictures, and it's a really cool story too. Leopold Dilg, D-I-L-G, how would you say that?
I would say Dilg.
Dilg,
Yeah.
played by Cary Grant. He's wrongly accused of arson, and so during his trial, he escapes from jail and he takes refuge in this remote cabin, which is owned by Nora Shelley, played by the great Jean Arthur. She was an old friend of his from school, and he also harbors a little thing for her. He kind of has feelings for her. Well, Nora believes in his innocence, and so she allows him to stay there and hide out, and he even poses as her landscaper because this Professor Lightcap, played by Ronald Colman, he comes to become a tenant at her house.
Okay.
And he is this legal expert who's on the verge of being named to the Supreme Court. So they have to hide Cary Grant from him. And
Oh,
so
gosh.
all these comic, crazy adventures ensue. The whole time, Carrie and Jean are falling in love. They're trying to keep him hidden. You can imagine, just madcap craziness.
Yeah.
Which is fun. I can't wait to see it. Fun fact about this one was that Stevens and Jean Arthur was known for being a perfectionist, and she was also known for being very difficult because of her extreme stage fright and shyness. A lot of directors did not enjoy working with Jean Arthur. She had sort of a bad reputation for being difficult because she was so emotional and scared.
Right.
Well, Stevens loved working with Jean Arthur. They just were simpatico and just got each other. So it was the opposite for him.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Jean Arthur called George Stevens her favorite director, and Stevens described Arthur as the finest actress I've ever worked with.
Oh,
so I just want to say
wow.
that Jean Arthur, not everyone thought she was difficult.
Yeah.
So.
And will George Stevens Jr. be at that screening?
He will. I think he'll do a Q&A or introduce it.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
But Talk of the Town, it was actually nominated for 7 Oscars. It included Best Picture, but it was snubbed in the acting and directing categories
Okay.
for some reason.
Interesting.
Yeah, all technical
Yeah.
Oscar nominations.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds what a great choice. Okay, here, my choice is based on the title alone. Moonlight and Pretzels.
Well, sign me up for that.
I know, right? Who doesn't like Moonlight and Pretzels
Yeah.
together? 1933, it's directed by Carl Freund. This is a pre-code film. Pre-code, of course, meaning before the Hays Code, that section of time between 27 and 1934 when really nothing was being censored.
And movies were sexier.
Yeah.
And the bad guys sometimes won.
Yeah,
Ooh.
exactly. They were more fun, right? This film from Universal is really a forgotten film. Not many people know about it, but it actually performed really well at the box office when it was released. So that's kind of interesting. It's been compared to Warner Brothers' Busby Berkeley musicals. And as I mentioned, directed by Carl Freund, who's actually better known as a cinematographer than a director. He would go on on to win an Academy Award for his cinematography for The Good Earth in 1937, a second Academy Award for technical achievement in 1955 for basically a light meter, a version of a light meter.
Oh, wow.
And if you're a fan of the reruns of the original I Love Lucy, you will know his name because he was the director of photography for Desilu Productions and did all of the I Love Lucy's, and he basically invented the 3-camera system that we still use to this day to shoot sitcoms.
Yeah, which I heard Desi Arnaz, though, was very instrumental in that as well.
Yes,
yeah.
but they worked together to really come up with how can we shoot this sitcom on film. They didn't want to use kinescope. They didn't want to use that process. So I thought that was really interesting. The story centers around an out-of-work singer played by an actor named Roger Pryor, whose sad moniker given to him by the studio was the poor man's Clark Gable.
Oh.
That's not good.
Not good.
He plays an out-of-work singer who lands a job in a small-town music store where he falls for his boss, played by Mary Bryan. Her moniker was the sweetest girl in pictures.
That's better.
So Pryor discovers a flair for songwriting. It takes him back to Broadway, and through a series of misunderstandings, it threatens this new romance. Freund, the director, had his cinematographer, William Miller, shoot the film in a small New York studio. He added stock footage to give an epic sweep to the musical numbers, particularly one dealing with the Great Depression and the New Deal. And he also mimicked Berkeley's famed overhead shots with the musical number.
Yeah.
So you can see his influence as a cinematographer in directing this film. And the film also features a supporting role played by William Frawley, who, of course, would go on to work with Freund in all those episodes, starring as Fred Mertz in I Love Lucy.
Oh, we love William Frawley.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Yeah. I'd never heard of that movie.
I've never heard of it
until
either.
I got this schedule lined up. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, now we're going to shift gears a little bit, right?
Yeah, let's shift gears.
Let's shift gears to movies we've seen, but we've never seen on the big screen and we're excited for.
Yes.
My first one, and I mentioned it earlier, is A Guy Named Joe from 1943, which of course was directed by Victor Fleming. It was written by Dalton Trumbo. It's based on a story by Chandler Sprague and David Boehm. It was an MGM picture with Spencer Tracy, Irene Dunn, Van Johnson, and it had a great supporting cast. Ward Bond, James Gleason, Lionel Barrymore, Barry Nelson, Henry O'Neill, Don Defoe. And in her second film ever, everyone's favorite mermaid, Esther Williams.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a story about this adventurous World War II bomber pilot named Pete Sandridge, played by, of course, Spencer Tracy. Well, he dies in an aerial attack after ordering the crew to safety. And well, he meets the General, which is a legendary dead pilot who assigns Pete to return to Earth as a guardian angel for this new pilot named Ted Randall, played by Van Johnson. But when Pete learns that Ted is dating Pete's former girlfriend, Dorinda, played by the great Irene Dunn, he then has to decide whether his jealousy is going to get the best of him or does he set it aside and prepare Ted for this dangerous bombing mission. Really cool storyline.
Yeah.
One fact about this movie was the Production Code Administration objected to the film's ending, which originally depicted Dunn's character crashing after bombing an enemy ammunition dump, thereby dying and reuniting herself with Pete, who of course had died. Well, the censors felt that this was terrible. It represented suicide. We couldn't have it. So they had to call Irene Dunn back from a vacation in Mexico City to film a revised ending for which she lives and she's reunited with Van Johnson's character.
Okay.
So interesting that they changed it completely.
Yes.
Well, this movie was remade in 1989, you might remember, as the movie Always with Richard Dreyfuss, Holly Hunter, and Brad Johnson.
Okay.
It got one Oscar nomination, which was for Best Writing Original Story for Boehm and Sprague.
Lovely. Well, mine that I've seen before that I can't wait to see on the big screen is a historical epic, Ben Hur.
Wow, that's a movie.
1959. This is a world premiere restoration of this film, so I'm excited about that. It's, of course, MGM's remake of the legendary 1925 silent film. It took 3 years to prepare Italy's Cinecittà Studios for the production. It featured 300 sets, more than 100,000 costumes, and over 8,000 extras.
Wow.
It actually was hailed by critics as an intimate epic, which is kind of an interesting description, thanks to William Wyler's direction. Wyler focused on the interpersonal relationships among Charlton Heston, who plays Judah Ben Hur, Stephen Boyd as his childhood friend turned enemy, Jack Hawkins as the Roman aristocrat who adopts Heston, and Hugh Griffith as the sheik who sponsors him in the legendary chariot race. 78 horses were trained for this film. By the time filming had finished, 1,250,000 feet of color film had been produced at the cost of $1 per foot, which back then was a lot.
Yeah.
The chariot race required 15,000 extras on a set constructed at Cinecittà Studios on 18 acres of the backlot. 18 chariots were built. Some sources say the race itself took 5 weeks to film. Some say it took 10 weeks.
Wow.
It took a lot, let me tell you. The film won a record 11 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director for Wyler, and of course, Best Actor for Charlton Heston. Who wouldn't want to see this on a big screen? And to top it all off, Alexander Payne is going to chat about it. And he's a huge champion for film restoration. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
Yes, that will be great. Talk about an epic masterpiece.
Yes.
I love that. Well, my next movie that I'm dying to see on the big screen, and I've seen it many times, but I just love it. And actually, I'm excited to see it because it's actually one of the movies being shown in VistaVision.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about it. We're No Angels, 1955. Of course, it's directed by Michael Curtiz. It was written by Reynold McDougall. It's based on the French play by Albert Husson. It's a Paramount Pictures movie. It starred Humphrey Bogart, Joan Bennett, Aldo Ray, Peter Ustinov. Had a great supporting cast. Basil Rathbone, Leo G. Carroll, Gloria Talbot, and John Baer. It's a really cool story. After breaking out of prison on Devil's Island, Joseph, played by Humphrey Bogart, and his 2 cohorts flee to this nearby town. Well, they hide out in this shop run by this very kind-hearted man named Felix, played by Leo G. Carroll, and his wife, played by Joan Bennett, and their daughter. Well, the 3 men plan to rob the place and then basically board a ship and get out of town. But the family, they're so kind to them. They invite them to a Christmas dinner. They really bond, and they see that the family's in trouble. The shop's failing. They're not doing well. They're about to go under. They have all these financial troubles. Well, the convicts decide that they're going to help them. So they get involved in their business and, of course, their personal life and romantic life, and it just becomes a whole thing. And it's really a wonderful, funny, heartfelt movie that I can't wait to see it on the big screen.
Story.
You know, a fun fact about this one, it was they actually remade We're No Angels in 1989. Neil Jordan directed it, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
It starred Robert De Niro, Sean Penn, and Demi Moore. It's kind of the same premise, but this one took place at a local monastery in upstate New York.
Can't wait to see the original. My last one that I've never seen on the big screen that I can't wait to see is Brigadoon, 1954, directed by Vincent Minnelli, music and lyrics by Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Lowe. Now, the guests that are going to be introducing and talking about this film are 2 pretty amazing people.
Yes.
George Chakiris, Academy Award winner for West Side Story, Barry Chase, who is a fabulous actress. Both of them were uncredited dancers in Brigadoon.
Isn't that wild?
It's wild, and they're with us, and they're going to be able to talk about it.
I love Barry Chase, and we were just talking about her from Cape Fear in one of our film noir episodes.
Yeah. Well, the story is 2 Americans, Tommy, played by Gene Kelly, Jeff, played by Van Johnson. They're on a hunting vacation in Scotland. They come across this quaint, beautiful village called Brigadoon. The village isn't on any map. And of course, Gene Kelly falls in love with the young lass that's there, played by Sid Charisse. But the town is mystical, and it only comes back one day every 100 years. So the dilemma is, what do you do when you fall in love with a girl that lives in a town that only comes back one day every 100 years?
Oh, what does one do?
What does one do? And that's basically the story. The film was initially dismissed by critics. I was looking at some research on it because of its use of studio sets. It was all shot on MGM's lot. I can get that because it's set in the Scottish Highlands. But more recently, critics have really found it to be Gene Kelly's inventive choreography, Joseph Ruttenberg's creative use of what's called Ansco Color and CinemaScope, which was a single strip system, unlike Technicolor, which was a 3-strip process. So all of those things have made it really stand out in more recent years. And of course, Sid Charisse and Gene Kelly have a standout dance together. in one of Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Lowe's best songs, The Heather on the Hill. Howard Keel, fun fact, Howard Keel and Jane Powell were originally slated to play the leads, and when commitments on other films left them unavailable, Gene Kelly and Sid Charisse were cast, and so the dance took more precedence over the singing. In fact, Sid Charisse was actually dubbed by Carol Richards, who also dubbed Vera Allen in Call Me Madam.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. The film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: costume, sound, and art direction, set direction. And Sid Charisse is reported to have said that this was her favorite film with Gene Kelly.
Oh, I love that. They were so good together.
They were so good. Dynamite couple. Well, this is going to be a fun-filled 4 days. Again, it's the Turner Classic Movie Festival in Hollywood at the historic Egyptian Theater, the Chinese Theater. Their home base is at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. So it's going to be a pretty spectacular 4 days. And I think we're going to need a vacation when we're done.
I think we are too. Well, you know, Nan and I will be there. So if you're at the film festival and you see us, come say hello. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to say hello. We'd love to talk to you. So if you see us at the festival, come say hi.
Yeah, and we're going to have some equipment with us so that we can get people's reactions to films and why they're there. So definitely come up and talk to us because
Maybe you'll be on the show.
Yeah, maybe you'll be on the show. All right, let's give listeners the question and answer to this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
Well, the question was about the film A Guy Named Joe from 1943, and it famously had to shut down production because of an accident. What happened, who was involved, and how did it affect the rest of their career?
All right, I know it was a car accident.
It was a car accident, and during the production, Van Johnson was very seriously injured in an automobile accident. The crash cut his forehead, and it damaged his skull so severely that the doctors had to insert a plate in his head.
Oh.
Well, he underwent brain surgery as well.
Oh,
well,
my gosh.
MGM wanted to replace Johnson and keep things moving, but Spencer Tracy convinced the studio to suspend filming until Johnson could heal and return to work, which was very, very cool on his part, which he did 4 months after the accident.
That's a long time to wait.
Yeah, exactly. But you can pinpoint the point in Van Johnson's career, pre-accident and post-accident, because you can always see a little scar on his forehead.
Okay.
Which is really interesting. So the next time you see a Van Johnson movie, look for the scar, and that tells
you'll know.
you, is it before or after 1943?
And did it have any lingering effects on his health or his... Okay.
I think he was fine.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for listening and spending time with us. We would love it if you would give us a 5-star review. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and you can watch the podcast on YouTube.
You can also email us at info@FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com.
That's this week's view.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
You've been listening to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign with Steve Cubine and Ann McNamara, the podcast that celebrates amazing stories of Tinseltown from its golden era. Join us next week for another episode and learn something else about Hollywood you probably never knew. Take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, and tell your friends about us too. It'll help grow the podcast. Visit Steve's website at FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com. The executive producers are Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara. Executive producer and post-production supervisor Lindsay Schnebley. Associate producer and researcher John Price Ritchie. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like The Box of Oddities and The Shallow End with Schnebley and Toth. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. That's a wrap.
Well, before we jump into more films that are at the Turner Classic Movie Festival, let's give our listeners this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
Well, we're going to do that. Yeah, we're going to get right on that.